Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me. Reading books and doing book reviews with these videos. Today I'm going to do a continuation. The Allende letters and the Vero edition of Morris Jessup's book, The Case for the UFOs. So Morris Jessup was a professor of astronomy, looking at the stars and studying, doing government contracts. Even down there in Nicaragua, that area, investigating the Mayan ruins, the pyramids. Down there in the Amazon, investigating the sources of the trees they use for rubber. So apparently he was a smart guy. And like me probably, he read a lot and thought a lot. And one of those people with a brain on top of his shoulders, instead of just being a zombie, like so many people who just don't want to think about stuff. So this video ought to be interesting because we're going to think about stuff. And the last video, part 1, was basically the Allende letters, which were 2 letters written to Morris Jessup about his book, The Case for the UFOs. The first letter he said, "Disrespectfully yours." And Jessup wrote him back and asked him to write again, and then he signed it, "Respectfully yours." But the bottom line is they talked about the Philadelphia experiment, the ship apparently that disappeared. And they talked also about Einstein and his theory of relativity, how that upon thinking about it, seeing the progress of mankind with technologies and where it was going, and doing mathematical calculating, Einstein freaked out and said, "Oh my God, if humans are doing this at this rate, what will they do with much more advanced technologies? For example, what would humans do with time travel? Look what the humans did when they came to the USA, America, to the Indians. And these were people from all over the world, humans. And they were even almost wiped out the Indian natives. South America, how many millions of natives? And of course, it's not all of us citizens. There seems to be this elite group of people who get all the lower worker class, people like me and most people, to do the dirty work for them. The conspiring behind the scenes to create World War I, World War II, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, creating the State of Israel, Chinese Revolution, and so much more. People behind the scenes, are they people? Are they human? Or is there just a mixed bag, some reptilians, greys, and humans that are involved? Would this include the Jesuits, Zionists, Freemasons, Illuminati, the occult, the Kabbalah, witchcraft, people into the mystery school of Babylon, apparently vying to take over the world with the New Age and the New World Order? So when we read this, that's a lot to ponder. So did the Philadelphia experiment happen? Did they put microwave transmitters around the ship? And did the ship disappear? I've got a couple pictures. We'll look at them. You know, I do realize this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. And when I talk about Satanism, we're talking about the Bible and other things. We're talking about witchcraft and magic. We're talking about the Super Bowl halftime shows, Grammys, the Olympic openings with Lady Gaga, where they were doing satanic rituals. Like on the Indiana Jones show, with the chanting in the background. lowering the lady down on the grate into the lava. The Bohemian Grove in California, where many of the political leaders, presidents, and others, Kissinger, have been photographed, where they have something called a cremation of care. They throw a baby in a fire, screaming and hollering like a Halloween movie, witchcraft ritual, which apparently is what they do with the Illuminati, and some kind of reptilian leader called Pindar. And if we look at our downtown historic areas, we see gargoyles and dragons up on the tops of the buildings. Rabbi Marvin Altelman, in his book To Eliminate the Opate, The Belief in God, where in Hitler's diary they abducted a young gypsy man in Munich, Germany, sacrificed him to bring forth an interdimensional being to impregnate a girl on the altar of the cult, to create some kind of supreme being. And then we have aliens, reptilians, greys, UFOs, and all that stuff. Books of oddities, psychic, paranormal material, all indicating there's more to reality than what we know. Something involving vortexes, like when you pull the plug on the tub and you see that little swirl of water going down, or a tornado, a vortex. So when you have these vortexes in magnetic fields, remember that. Apparently, it creates some kind of anomaly. And we have CERN in Geneva, on the border of France and Switzerland, with a statue of the goddess of destruction, Shiva, out front, 666 in the logo, and apparently Geneva is the long-term homeland or main location for the Illuminati, and the source of the Frankenstein myth. You can't make this stuff up. I could go on with examples. But anyways, we are talking about Morris Jessup and his book, A Case for UFOs, and then Allende sending him 2 letters talking about the Philadelphia experiment where the ship disappeared, and that he shamed Morris Jessup for saying we should continue with Einstein's theory of relativity. He said it was very dangerous, and even Einstein erased the chalkboard and wanted to stop the formula from getting out because of what he found out. So anyways, where did they take that technology and research from Einstein? And remember, in 1943, World War II was in full play, and America was trying to feverishly get some weapon, a heads up on Germany. And eventually, of course, at the end of the war, they created the atomic bomb, and they exploded 2 of those in Japan, and right after that became the UFO issue. More sightings everywhere. So who did we wake up? What's the concern? So anyways, I went on the internet, and I looked up the Philadelphia experiment pictures, images, and I found the site with a bunch of pictures and images, and I went to the drugstore and printed some of them out, so I thought we'd just look at them on this video. So apparently they put microwave transmitters, just like your microwave oven. If you open the door, it would transmit microwaves into the room, and the proper amount of energy and location, creating a sort of an opaque sphere, oblong sphere, would cause something in the midst of it to disappear like this. You know, the million-dollar question is, did it happen? And when it reappeared, apparently some of the soldiers, the troops, were stuck half in and half out of the bulkhead. Look at his leg inside the steel. So when everything dematerialized, if you didn't stay put and you moved around, when it rematerialized, you might find yourself inside the steel. And apparently, here's some of the renditions of what happened with the electricity when they turned that on. I think you can see part of the ship disappearing if this picture is legit. Again, apparently with this electromagnetic fields, They caused some kind of vortex. So one question would be, what is our reality? How is it really working? And I've got some interesting answers in that direction. I did a few calculations with some math, which we will discuss. And apparently, here's some more evidence of 1943. And the ship, the Andrew Forthwith, which was the one Allende was on, which was monitoring the Eldridge, the battleship with the transmitters on it that disappeared. And apparently Carl Allen, which is Allende's real name, here's his United States Department of Commerce Certificate of Service as a seaman. So I just thought I'd look into this a little further. And apparently, this was the path of the ships during the mission. So you can go online and look up the Philadelphia experiment images and just further investigate. And apparently from the Forthwith, I'm probably saying the name of the ship wrong, but apparently the one that disappeared, something like this happened, some kind of hole in space. Which, by the way, if you look up a lot of the UFO videos on YouTube, there's where the UFO pops out of, or where it goes into the atmosphere up above, there's some kind of vortex hole like that, interdimensional portal. At least we forget they're trying to open up some kind of portal over there with CERN right now. And many physicists and scientists are saying we shouldn't be doing that. Apparently, here's another guy that was stuck half in and out of the bulkhead. Look at his leg. He's actually in the deck of the ship. Half of his body, quarter of his body. I don't think these are probably real pictures. They're probably artist renditions. But apparently, here's what the ship looks like. And you can see that it's sailing the opposite end of my finger. You can see where it is in the water, but you can't see it. So you can see in the middle, it's starting to disappear. Where did these pictures come from? I got them from the website. I'd have to do more research. And apparently the technology involved those transmitters on ships. And that was the same technology they used at the Montauk Project at the end of Montauk, Long Island, a town called Montauk, and there was a fort there. And they had this dish there, which is called a sage antenna. And apparently the frequencies were just right for the researcher of opening up portals and other horrendous things they were doing. And they used psychics and they abducted young boys to perform the experiments on, even opening time portals and pushing the boys through. And the ones that wandered back through when they left the portal open, the boys would describe what they had seen. And many of the young boys didn't return. A lot of them were dead. And apparently there were piles of bones of the boys that died at Project Montauk at the end of Long Island. So apparently here's a transmitter, a picture, and a car disappearing. You can see the transmitter where my finger is, and the electricity on top of those two poles. And the engine of the car is still visible, but most of the car is disappearing. And it looks like you can see in the background there plenty of voltage panels, probably required a lot of electricity. This is apparently Nikola Tesla's technology. So another picture of the Eldridge, USS Eldridge, when they turn the transmitter on to make the ship disappear. Before, after, and in the middle. You can see the ship before in the center when they turn on the generator, the transmitters, and then after the ship is gone. This would have been horrible to experience, I'm sure. You can see that one guy looks like he was in motion walking when it dematerialized. Two hands were through his head, his face, and his leg. It was actually in motion. And apparently more written evidence here about the Philadelphia experiment. Kind of hard to make this out. I'll have to take some time with a magnifying glass and try to see everything that it says. But it was on the website. And here is the ship, the Eldridge. I don't know if it reappeared somewhere where there was no water, but it looks like it's really crashed into the cement there. And it looks like there's all kinds of arcing and sparks all over the ship. And it was being monitored where Allen was on the fourth ship. And this is what they saw off in a distance, that vortex hole in space. The observer ship. And on the Eldridge, here was one of the transmitters aiming the energy. And apparently the test crew graduation, Philadelphia, December 1942. So before they performed the experiment, they had trained a bunch of people, and these are the people, and there's the date in their photo. So, did it happen? So let's get back to this book, and I think Jessup right now moves on to, we're going to move on to his book, The Case for UFOs, that apparently Alan Allende got, marked it up and sent it to the Navy in a folder that said Happy Easter. And it was Jessup's book, so the Navy got a hold of Morris Jessup, who looked at the writing in the book and said, wow, I got 2 letters from that guy. The handwriting's the same. That would be the Allende letters. So you have all that evidence and information. And in the last video, I went over some of it. As crazy as it might be, to me it just seems it's something we ought to at least have in the back of our mind when we're reading other things. Knowing that the Freemasons, Illuminati, Zionists, Jesuits, and all the other people, Kabbalah people, occult people, witchcraft people, elites in Hollywood and all that, who control our government and much of the big corporations and resources around the world, obviously they are aware of all this stuff that I'm researching. They don't want the people to know. People have died trying to get the information out. Morris Jessup was found in his car with a pipe taped around the tailpipe and shoved around the window with the window cranked up, pumping in the exhaust to kill him. So a lot of people think he was murdered. So anyways, moving on. Part 1, A Case for UFOs. I always like this part. You've heard this before. If it waddles. If it looks like a duck, waddles like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims and has webbed feet, then perhaps it is a duck. Anyways, the controversy over the so-called flying saucers began in such a fashion that Kenneth Arnold's startling announcement in 1947. So they did the Philadelphia experiment in 43, and I think the nuclear explosions were 45 or 46. The UFOs started showing up in 47. Coincidence? A businessman of Boise, Idaho, Mr. Arnold was on his way from Chehalis to Yakima, Washington, flying his private plane. He was startled to see a bright flash on his wing. Looking in the direction of Mount Rainier, he was astonished to see 9 gleaming discs, each approximately the size of a C-54. They were clearly outlined against the snow. Thus, as of June 24, 1947, flying saucers were born. I saw them, but What are they? Mr. Arnold undoubtedly asked, and no one had the answer. Alright, moving on to the next page, and I'm only reading my highlighted portions, which you can see there's not too much there, and most of them are going to be the comments by apparently 3 entities. Some people believe they're aliens. Certainly people in the know who made comments in Morris Jessup's book, The Case for UFOs. So anyways, that was Jessup's book we were reading there about the Kenneth Arnold sighting the UFOs. So another paragraph goes by, and they highlighted in the book, where do they come from? And again, these 3 entities wrote in different kinds of ink, and that's called the annotations of the book. And one of the other entities says, "No worry, Jemmy, those were LM ships, not S-men." So I guess the M means men, so LM men and S-men. They are an improved type. That's would have been those ships that Kenneth Arnold saw, those flying saucers. And were only on a training flight. So apparently UFOs are on training flights on planet Earth. That is why their leader interconnected their force fields. Again, we look at the Philadelphia experiment, we see that ship disappearing. I suppose that technology would be similar to force fields. And then in the beginning of this particular series, this marathon since series number 73, Transylvania Sunrise, I did, Peter Moon, and the author of that book, were in Romania, the Busigi Mountains. They found a laboratory that was thousands of years old. I did a book reviews on that when I started this series in number 73. This is number 82. So I think I'm up to about 8 books on this little marathon concerning these kinds of issues. And how does that relate to Freemasonry and Satanism? Again, the Freemasons, where a lot of the politicians come from, whether you call it the Skull and Bones or Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Trilateral Commissions, Bilderberger groups, so many names. Anyways, these are the people who become our politicians and leaders and movers and shakers of the world. So obviously they're aware of all these technologies and issues happening in the world. But they don't want us to know. So apparently that is why their leader interconnected the force fields to teach them ion level telecontrol without inducing a fear block, which they too get when mowing the lawn. So I guess mowing the lawn means when you're flying these flying saucers too close to the ground. So apparently somebody photographed a flying saucer in the Brazilian jungle. And then Desmond Leslie, in the book Flying Saucers Have Landed, I have that book. I have many books on this topic. So L-men pals and S-men not. So I don't know what an L-man is or an S-man. I'd like to find out. Even if he knew, he nor any number of men could ever do anything, says Jemmy. And I'm only reading highlighted portions to Morris Jessup's book, The Case for UFOs. And basically he's just talking about all the evidence. And I'm just trying to read the aliens or whoever these beings are, their comments. And then I'll interject with my comments. And another one of the entities says, for first they would refuse to even believe. Requires true humility or active fascination. Alright, moving on. This is my highlighted portions. In varying degrees, these happenings have generally been called supernatural. In more modern terminology, paranormal. So that was Jessup's comment. The alien said, only a few have dared to admit these phenomena and to investigate them. Well, in my series of videos, hundreds of hours, I've collected the books, and I've been investigating it, and I've been sharing it with my own comments and my own thinking. A diverse lineup of books. Everything from Helena Blavatsky, the Bible, UFOs, Freemasons, all kinds of books, if you've been watching my videos. And I figure if you watch them and watch them and watch them, you will do what I do. You'll come up with a conclusion. You'll have a better picture of reality. What is real? We're talking two large topics here. Paranormal beings, spirits, like I'm a biological body here with a spirit inside. Ghosts, souls, demons, unclean spirits, angels. And on the other hand, of course, you got gray aliens, reptilian-looking aliens, ships that glow like a bright light, some of them that look like metal the size of a saucer, some of them that look like black metal, gigantic triangles the size of a football field, big boomerang-looking thing. I've done a video on that, the spacecraft that were sighted all over the Northeast in 1983 and 1984. If you go back and check my videos. And then some ships that are just miles wide, blacking out the sky. What to believe? That is the question. So anyways, another one of the entities says, don't worry, those few do not count. He again asked, too much of proud, vain humankind. So it's interesting who these entities are in their comments. So Jessup says, to begin such a leap into the maelstrom of the supernatural, we must first clarify or use the word world. We must not limit it to a state or a continent, and despite the fact that it may disturb our complacency and arouse vague fears, we can no longer limit it to a single planet. The earth is not alone, nor has it been for some time. Moving on here. This heterogeneous mass of data has doubtless been preserved for some purpose. If life has any meaning at all, and the solution of the mystery of the UFOs may well be that purpose. So we all know throughout history there are monuments all over the earth. China, South America, North America, Egypt, the pyramids, the Sphinx, Machu Picchu lines, Easter Island, the gigantic statues, the big stones in Lebanon at Baalbek. And then, of course, all the hieroglyphics and stones, tablets, the Bible, and so much more tell a story of history. And this is the mystery school of Babylon, which the Freemasons study and all the other occult organizations, whether they have temples or lodges or secret organizations with secret meetings, making decisions what's going to happen to we the people, mankind. And it might behoove we the people to wake up and find out what those decisions they're planning for us might be. Moving on, the alien highlighted some of Jessup's conversation, as you can see here. One self-confident, assertive, and arrogant scientist, backed up by a tactic support of his esoteric profession, can deny the occurrence, obfuscate its record, nullify its import, and come close to convincing the 10,000 people that they did not see what they plainly saw. This, of course, is not really science. So apparently, throughout history, since this UFO sighting situation arose back in '47, a lot of people have been approached by men in black suits or whatever, like the TV movie and threatened to shut up, to not say anything about what they saw. Even the Roswell incident. It comes close to a kind of intelligent dictatorship and imperialism of the intellect. Thus, by relating the previous unrelated, we can build a wall unscalable by such conformists. Anyway, so apparently the alien writes here, such contempt for those badly frightened or strictly orthodox namby-pamby scientists. Alright, moving on to some more of Jessup's conversation, which the aliens highlighted. And as we shriek our responsibilities, some of the unexplained paranormal do seem to lie in what, for lack of a better terminology, we must still call the paranormal or the psychic fields. So it seems I'm not alone in connecting the Theophist Society, mysticism, witchcraft, pagan religion, the New Age, the New World Order, including the gay agenda, destroying Christianity, and all this alien UFO activity. It seems to all be interconnected. So the big question is, just exactly what is going on? What is reality? Therefore, we must sort our observations into two groups. One group will contain everything which can be attributed to physical action by intelligent beings or by undefined and non-spiritual status. I hope you're following me. I'm not making this too complex. The second group is the residue which, as far as one can judge, after careful consideration, must remain associated with the psychic or spiritual realm. Remember Aleister Crowley, who wrote the book, The Law of One, and he was apparently incommunicato with Hiawatha, and he drew a picture of Hiawatha, which you can look up. Looks like a gray alien. And a lot of the abduction and UFO books have pictures of the gray aliens and other creatures that look generally human, and some half human, half reptilian, and some definitely hugely reptilian, even very tall, and including the information in Arizona Wilder in the David Icke interview on a YouTube you could look up. Arizona Wilder was an insider, trained since she was a child to be, I guess, a leader witch in the Illuminati rituals, performing strange things, satanic sexual activity, sacrificing people. Anyway, she broke away, and she was telling David Icke all the details. And apparently, they do shapeshift, and some famous people, most people know the name of these people if you watch the video, attended these rituals and were seen shape-shifting. And Arizona Wilder is not the only person to testify about these things. Todd Long, Fritz Springmeier has a good book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. There's so many books out there. Anyways, back to my highlighted portions of this book. One of these relate to things which fall from the sky, some of which come from space, and which may be roughly classed as organic or inorganic. Throughout history, there are many books written, many oddities in newspapers all over the world, of just strange things popping up out of nowhere. Like maybe a whale on a field in Kansas. Metal falling from the sky. All kinds of stuff. Raw meat. Carcasses of animals. Just strange things. Or a deluge of water. Like somebody was emptying out the hull of a ship in space that was full of water. Maybe the water went bad and they didn't need it. So somebody just opened up the thing and just dumped this water that came down in a deluge. These strange things happen. Strange clouds moving over people and things being seen. There are many books on this subject. I have many of them we will go over them. I have gone over some of them. Moving on in this book, a second major category stands out in the biography of oddities. It is the gray area of events which encompass disappearing people. We all know about the Bermuda Triangle. And ships, airplanes, airships crashing, disappearing without a trace and without warning, instances and mysterious transportations of people and things, inexplicable tracks and marks such as the devil footprints at Devonshire, and the cup marks found in stone over much of the world. Cup marks found in stone all over the world. An organically shaped meteorite found in territory rock and coal formations. Evidence of levitation and flight from prehistoric antiquity, and many other phenomena which appear to be or resemble acts rather than things. So we're all aware that you can't build the pyramids and many of the monuments that are seen today. You can't build them today. So apparently these ancients, before the Great Flood, had levitation technologies. But there is a third great area of observational data. It is that vast conglomerate of purely astronomical observations that relates to things and phenomena in space or on planets and satellites other than Earth. These are the unpopular, poor relatives of orthodox astronomy and untouchable erratics. Okay, the aliens are highlighting this sentence. These have come to be regarded with such disfavor that there are few published records of them within the past 50 to 75 years. Moving on. What cannot be escaped? There are, of course, such men who, like the one that would not permit himself to view the planets circling the sun, lest it interfere with his religious dogmas of the day. So a lot of people don't want to investigate, think about stuff. If it interferes with what they believe is their reality. It soon developed as a pattern began to evolve, that we could not coordinate these onslaughts from the sky, nor interpret them, unless we gave consideration to their effect, their origins, and their concomitant phenomenon. Not only that, but very shortly we were forced to acknowledge that falling objects and other phenomena in the sky must be considered in three categories in order to ensue from chaos. A second group was obviously the product of thinking, if not indeed a higher mental characteristics such as purposefulness, determination, morality, and perhaps even humor. So a lot of stuff that happened in history kind of confuses people. Why did they happen? All right, it's necessary to consider various sources of the orbitable ice, depending on whether it came from the exploded fifth planet or it was blasted off the Earth by prehistoric atom scientists. So, if you don't know, there's beyond Saturn is where a planet should be, is a whole debris field rotating around the sun, which they say is an exploded planet. Moving on, the aliens wrote something here, or whoever they were. I am not adverse to saying that a force field can make a man to fly, for I have seen it done. And I know the cause of this flight, and am not disturbed. Paris Exhibition, 1951, scientists from Paris University demonstrate this. An AP, Associated Press, photo was sent to U.S. showing this action. So there's been a lot of instances where things were discovered, and then we never hear of that technology again. The U.S. Navy force field experiments in 1943, so now they're talking about the Philadelphia experiment. October produced invisibility of crew and ship. Fearsome results, so terrifying as to fortunately halt further research. And if we've been following what I've been investigating, the research just went underground, like the Montauk Project at the end of Long Island. The only common denominator for all the observed conditions turned out to be, of all things, hydroponic tanks in spacecraft. And the alien says, as you can see here, the alien made a comment on the head. So the Jessup, the scientist, is speculating that that water came from hydroponic tanks and spacecraft, and the alien says, on the head. And are we to cringe before the deposition of a few hundreds of dead birds from the heavens, all in one city, but of species completely scrambled and mostly unknown within hundreds of miles of that city? So birds dropping from the sky in a city, and those birds were not native to that area. How did they get transported? Why did they all die? So the alien says when they were dropping this meat on the ground that it was spoiled food and it was dropped. So again, I'm not of the opinion, trying to figure out my opinion, that these craft or aliens actually came from some distant star system like Orion or Sirius. Apparently there have been some kind of entity living on this planet all along. For some of the clouds which we studied just disappeared. So a lot of times when things fell from the sky, a strange cloud showed up and stuff fell from the sky. What was in the cloud? Can a spaceship disguise itself as a cloud? Just thinking, having a conversation on this video, reading some of these sentences and paragraphs. Among these phenomena involving people, the sudden disappearances are probably the most amazing. Some have disappeared instantly while being watched by friends and close relatives. Crews have mysteriously disappeared from ships, sometimes within sight of their home port, without warning and without trace. The alien writes, you can see it here, he laughs, he goes, hey, if he only knew why, he'd die of shock. Oh my. So if Mr. Morris Jessup knew why people would disappear on a ship, even when they were coming right into the sight of the dock, the alien says if he only knew why, he'd die of shock. And again, was it an alien that sent in those notes? They seem to describe themselves that way, or was it some kind of hybrid creatures or some people from some kind of Illuminati organization, magic, witchcraft group who understands what's really going on in our reality, making fun with Mr. Morris Jessup by marking up his book and sending it to the Navy. There are too many instances of planes and ships disappearing for us to ignore them. One plane is reported to have flown into a cloud from which it never emerged, while the crew of a blimp disappeared before the eyes of dozens of watchers. We are still wondering what happened to about 50 passengers from a plane whose wreckage was found recently on the mountainside in the Pacific Northwest. So the plane crashed and there were no bodies. These are several of the instances which have prompted some writers to postulate that the UFOs were on the attack. All right, moving on here. This conclusion is made unavoidably by the antiquity of records of UFOs and wingless flight. It is apparent that the innumerable megalithic works of stone, which involve masses too huge to be moved by means other than levitation. So these monuments are all over the world. So now the alien writes, the man is close. Too close. Jessup writes, in my highlighted sentences only here I'm reading, if UFOs have been here for 300,000 years and have not yet chosen to launch a mass attack on humanity, it is scarcely likely that they will do it now. And I thought about that yesterday. Two things I might mention. In the first part one of this book, the video I made, I said the government purchased 450 hollow point bullets. I meant 450 million. And I thought about it, you know, the things that have happened in history. It's like somebody's playing a chess game with we the people. The wars between neighboring countries all over the world. Just an immense amount of murder and mayhem. And one has to wonder, are these entities who are hiding on this planet behind the scenes, are they the cause of it? Okay, moving on. Is this then a hint that we are at this moment awakening and like a chrysalis emerging into a new and more powerful state of existence and cosmicness, are therefore our current troubles, domestically and internationally? See, all this is related, but the excruciating birth pains of such a renaissance as we could not have imagined. Are we in a situation right now where the world is changing? We cannot imagine. One short generation ago, will we then perhaps be welcomed rather than repelled by the intelligences that inhabit the UFOs, or which may even be the UFOs? Man's emotional structure is such that he cannot awaken to powers of true thinking. The alien wrote that. All right, so it was not thought that men would ever mature. Don't worry, Jemmy. So I don't know if they're aliens or whoever. They're speculating they might be aliens, but they certainly seem to be people that are mocking humans and appear to think that they know more than we know. Perhaps the oldest and almost surely the most prolific of sources bearing on wingless flight are the records of the Indian and Tibetan monasteries. These in themselves are almost conclusive. Records some 15,000 years ago imply wingless flight at least 70,000 years prior to that. Add this to the recorded visit of a space fleet to the court of Thutmose III, approximately 1500 BC. So that's 3,500 years ago. And we are close to parallel the sightings of today. Evidence of continued interest by the space dwellers comes from the medieval France, where Adamski was completely scooped by elements of the French populace who were given rides in the UFOs. So apparently there is some history about some French people given ride in UFOs. So the alien writes, no, not pals, but the French are such of a general philosophical attitude, even in that day, that they were chosen to be contacted. Now some Allemands live in France out of preference in field of philosophical study. They like it. So apparently some of these beings are living in France. Moving on to another highlighted portion. As without our observations today, as with our own observations today, any single sighting by an astronomer could be mistaken or an illusion. But hundreds of sightings are involved and dozens of serious, reliable astronomers. And the alien writes, boy, if he only knew the thousands. And if you go on any UFO reporting site, as I've shown, people everywhere all over the world are reporting seeing these strange anomalies. And you can categorize them. If you go on there and start just writing down the different descriptions, you'll see the common denominators, whether it's in Tennessee, the United States, or France, or Bosnia, or They got orange orbs. They got flying saucer shapes. They got mother ships. They got cigar-type ships. Are they made here on Earth? Are creatures living in the ocean? Is there a civilization or two underground? As Hitler had indicated, the Vril Society. Many round things have been seen crossing the disk of the sun and moon, and some in space with no background. Or is all of what I am reading a grand deception? Really? The astronomers have seen two distinct classes of objects. The spherical, definitely outlined ones, and the hazy, nebulous ones. Both have appeared to undergo intelligent manipulation and exhibit erratic motions. Now, knowing that they brought the Theophist religion in the early part of the 1900s, Helena Blavatsky and other people, and knowing they were trying to create a communist world, which means elites having the rest of the people as slaves. If anybody thinks the kind-sounding word socialism is not communism, they need to think again. Where the citizens will not have any property rights, certainly not be able to mine any kind of resources, even own your own farm and just grow any kind of wealth. Apparently the Illuminati, witchcraft, occultic types think that we are all animals and cattle. So is all this UFO alien thing all a facade? All a hoax? Is there another kind of reality that we might want to contemplate? With that said, let's look at some pictures. Let's talk about history, about another kind of reality that apparently was. And a lot of people are talking about it on the internet. So apparently what they're saying, some people, is that the Earth is flat. I know in the last video I gave my brief description that there was this gigantic plateau with a foundation shaped almost like a gigantic tooth. And the whole surface on the top was ice fields mixed in with domes, 54 of them. And the one dome that we live under, according to this vision and dream I had, I know. And then I found these pictures and I go, oh my God, that was like my dream. And there's underground tunnels that connect these domes. So are we all being tricked? Is it all a grand deception? Is all this UFO a hoax? On this gigantic plane that we live on, plateau, on this gigantic body in space, are there 53 other domed societies, some much more advanced? Some could be not as advanced as we are. Some could be different cultures, different races of people, different kinds of manifestation of humanity. In other words, we're very dense, fleshy types. Maybe there's another type of humanity that's not so dense and fleshy, more like angelic beings. With that said, look at the angels on this picture. In the corners of this flat earth theory thing. But I like to pay attention to the angels. Just square and stationary earth. So if you go look up flat earth images and pictures, you'll find this stuff. Not that I'm saying that the earth is flat, but if you go look up the Rosicrucian material, which is part of the secret mystery school of Babylon, witchcraft magic, the Rosicrucian enlightenment, look at that. What kind of other reality could there be out there? I think it might behoove us to at least think about it. What are these people, these Illuminati, Freemasonic types, witchcraft people, occultic, Kabbalah, Zionists, Jesuits, all these people in the know. What's really going on? More on the firmament and the flat earth theory, with apparently underground facilities. Personally, I thought the flat earth theory is crazy. But then I've got some other information to discuss. What kind of reality is there out there? Where did all these pictures and thoughts come from? Remember, it wasn't that long ago that everybody on the planet Earth thought it was a flat Earth. And they had magicians and witchcraft and all that stuff going on for eons, including seriously spiritual realities of Jesus manifesting bread and fish out of just a couple, healing people. And then when he took a couple disciples to the top of a mountain, a dark cloud showed up. And from the cloud it says, "This is my son, whom I am very proud. Listen to him." Apparently God speaking about Jesus. And then appeared out of nowhere Moses and Elijah. And the disciples were all freaked out. And that was in the book of Gospel of St. Matthew I read. And I think it was in the Gospel of St. Mark also. So is the, here's a picture of the planets, or I should say the continents, surrounded by an ice field, as I had in my dream. And it's illegal. Apparently the South Pole is the ice field around all the continents. And the North Pole is a hole in the earth. This is my theory now. Where probably they have this huge transmitter force field that ejects from, creating an umbrella effect, which also allows us to see the Aurora Borealis, this energy field coming out of the ground. But here this picture it shows the ice field surrounding the continents, and in the North Pole some ice right in the middle of this picture. Is that really how it is? And here you see on the South Pole, all you see is an ice field down there. Has somebody just redrawn the map to fool us? And there has been no actual photograph taken from space of Earth. All the things you see are composites. Why have they never taken a picture of Earth from space and shown it to us? How bizarre is that? We've seen pictures of the moon. Why can't we actually get a picture from one of the ships that maybe went out there to Mars or something? Couldn't it have turned around, take a picture of Earth and go, "Hey, here's the first"? Everybody on Earth would see it and go, "Wow, that's cool." Never happened. Why? Would it be a gigantic flat plateau with 54 domes on it? I didn't make these pictures up. I just found them today on just before this video. I went on Flat Earth Theory. And notice the United Nations logo has a flat earth with the center like the North Pole, that picture I just showed you. What is up? And then throughout history, they had this theory. Look at this. 900, 600, 900 years before Jesus right there. 500 BC. 154 BC. What to believe? What to believe? Do we have a canopy over us? Some big force field? Remember they made a movie like this with the Lost in Space, the movie? This is part of the Mystery School of Babylon, Rosie Crucian material. Mysticism, Helena Blavatsky. We're going to read those books and investigate these questions. Is this the way the world really is? See the ice field around the perimeter? The dot in the middle? Maybe if we do have a force field over us, protecting us. Of course, the ancients thought this in Columbus's day. But in reality, so you can see this picture the snowfield all along the bottom, the South Pole. Did somebody rearrange the map so people wouldn't know that reality is really like this? Now just think of the top of this as a gigantic ice field, and of course anything in space is frozen. Everybody knows that. If you study about comets and all that stuff, the tails, the big gigantic chunks of ice. So in space, everything's frozen. So if this thing is stationary, a massive chunk of ice and mineral in space, and on top of it, imagine 54 domes. Of course, this artist's rendition says the whole thing is planet Earth on top. But I'm just saying, it's not water going over the edge. It's because when you go to the South Pole, the Arctic, the ice sheets, what, a mile high? Sheer ice. You can't get over them. It's very difficult. So what is reality? And I'm not proposing that I believe this yet, if I ever will, but the material is out there to find. Instead of a globe that you look at, they got these pictures of Earth like this. And we know who controls our world, the elitists from the Freemasonic schools, Illuminati, Scottish Rite, York Rite, and all kinds of mystery schools, Rosicrucian, Kabbalah, and all those symbolism on football halftime shows, Grammys, Olympic openings, logos for corporations, logos for the United Nations, gargoyles and dragons on our buildings and historic downtown areas. Something strange. And here's Rick, me, just asking some questions, reading these books. So what is it? You see that Earth there? And you see that stationary body? I want to make a point here. Is the stationary body the reality? Or is it the Earth thing, which is a composite video, and they've never taken a picture of Earth before? That's a composite. They take a bunch of pictures from the sky with a plane, and they put them in a computer, and they make a composite. Now, I know what you're thinking. Rick. Please. Let me give you some fun facts. I did a little homework a little while ago. And I looked up the sun. And I did some mathematics. The sun is the diameter from, if I went from one end of the sun to the other, right through the middle of the core, not the circumference, is 864,938 miles. So the diameter is almost 1,000,000 miles. If you were to go from one side of the sun through the center and out the other side. The circumference, if you use the formula, pi equals circumference divided by diameter. And to find their circumference, you take pi 3.14 times the diameter. And you get the circumference, which is 2,713,406 miles. So almost 3 million miles to go around the sun, if you were on the sun's surface. Anyways, so if you were on the sun's surface and you went around the sun in one Earth year, 365 days, that would be 7,433 miles a day, almost 7,500 miles a day, which would be 309 miles an hour. You'd have to go to get around the sun. For 24 hours at 309 miles at 365 days. So that's at the sun. So I thought to myself, okay, well, how far is Earth? And how fast do you have to go from Earth to go around the sun? So the Earth is 7,926 miles in diameter. From where I'm sitting, if I went through the core to the other side, is almost 8,000 miles. So that means the diameter is 24,887 miles. Almost 25,000 miles to, if I had a highway that exactly went around the equator, it would be almost 25,000 miles. So if I wanted to go around the Earth in a day, as the Earth spins, I would have to drive 1,036 miles per hour to get around the sun. I mean, to get around the Earth in 24 hours. So when the Earth turns facing the sun, from morning to morning, it has to travel at 1,036 miles. So about 1,000 miles an hour, the Earth is spinning. The point of my conversation here. Now, that's pretty fast. The surface of the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And what do we have on the surface? We have a lot of water. A lot of water. So if that Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, hurtling through space, and it's going to get worse here in a minute, or is it a stationary Earth that's not spinning at 1,000 miles an hour? Alright, so the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And if it's the way we're all taught in school, and remember, whatever we know is stuff that they taught us. And they're the secret mystery schools of Babylon, and they swear under threat of death not to divulge the secrets. And they seem to be planning some kind of new age, new world order for we the people, trying to destroy Christianity and bring upon us this new satanic, Luciferic religion that has a philosophy of chaos and anarchy, like a Mad Max movie or the Hunger Games movie. And they, in some countries, and now in the army, it's a court-martial offense if you try to talk about Jesus. So they want to destroy Christianity and God. And we're talking about UFOs and aliens and the Philadelphia experiment. So I'm just kind of cooking the brain a little bit thinking here. So listen to this. The Earth is 92,955,807 miles from the sun. So let's just round it off to 93 million miles away. The Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun. 93 million. So, using my math, what is the distance the Earth travels around the sun? If it goes around the sun in 1 year, 365 days. So the radius is 1 AU, how far we are from the sun. And I didn't bother to be picky here and ask if that was to the surface or the center. We'll just throw that out the window. Forget about the small stuff. So the radius to the sun is 1 AU, about 93 million miles. So the diameter from the Earth, if it's on this side of the sun right now, and half a year it's completely on the other side, that would be 2 EUs. So that's 185 million miles is the diameter from when the Earth at the summer is on one side of the sun, and the exact opposite day, the solstice, on the winter, it's across the other side. If there were 2 Earths and they were exactly opposite, the distance would be 185, almost 186 million miles. 185,911.614 miles. Multiplying that times 3.14 pi gives us a circumference, get this, going around the sun now. The whole thing travels in 1 year, 583,762,467 miles. So when the Earth travels completely around the sun and returns to where it started from, let's say on the 1st of June, it had traveled 583 million miles plus. 583 million miles. So, let's break that down by the day. How many miles do we go per day? Divided by 365, we go 1,599,349 miles. So we go over 1.5 million, 1,600,000 miles per day. Per day, we go 1.5 million more miles per day in one arc going around the sun. 1.5 million miles per day. The Earth. This ball. With the water on it. Not the stationary one here that most of history has believed exist. So per day, we're doing more than 1.5 million miles traveling. Break that down to 24 hours. And this number popped out at me, kind of shocked me. I didn't expect it. But it's 666 and 39 miles per hour. Yep, that was a surprise number. 666 miles per hour. The Earth is hurtling 666,000 now. So 66,639 per hour. Almost 70,000 miles per hour. The sun is hurtling through space, while it's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour on its axis. So what is more believable? This big body sitting in space with all that water on top of the surface, or this planet spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, hurtling through space at 66,639 miles per hour. Almost 67,000 miles per hour. It's hurtling through space. Pretty crazy. All right, I got a couple more pictures. I guess the way the ancients used to believe it. And apparently, the way the flat Earth theory goes is there is some kind of thing that rotates in the sky and above the flat Earth theory with a sun and a moon. And again, I'm not trying to sell this to anybody. I'm just doing my own investigation and sharing my thoughts. Some other renditions of how it might look. And again, if it is a flat Earth theory, the ice fields all around the edges. And I'm saying my dream was there's a gigantic plateau, bigger than one Earth. This is just one dome of 54 domes, 53 others. According to my dream I had. I don't know. I can dream. Dreams are crazy, aren't they? The flat Earth map real. So is there a gigantic plateau? Again, 66 in my dream, because I asked in my dream, how big is this plateau? And they said it was 66 times the diameter of Earth. So now that I know the diameter of Earth, 66 times 9 or something, I'll have to look at that. Here's more renditions. You can go look this up. You can go look up flat Earth theory. Look at the bottom there. On my dream, I said it looked like a big tooth. It had some kind of foundation underneath it. And I had not seen these pictures when I announced this in my previous video in this series 82. And I thought, well, you know, where did I get that stuff from? I need to go look it up. And then we've never had a picture of Earth taken from space. These are all composites. Why can't they take a picture of Earth from space? If it is a gigantic plateau, it would be obvious. Wouldn't it? They couldn't hide it. So all these pictures, you can go look up flat Earth theory. Fascinating conversation. You see all these people bickering and fighting on the YouTube videos, and I'm thinking, what the heck are they talking about? Are they just nuts? But in my dream, there were 54 domes, and there were underground highways connecting the different domes. And again, I don't know if anybody who's ever mentioned that dream I had. And, you know, not all dreams are real. But we are kind of curious. What's with all the mystery school of Babylon and all the wars and killing all the Arabs in the Middle East and wanting to rebuild King Solomon's temple and the ancient monuments of the pharaohs and the great flood caused by God to destroy the people on the planet because they were all evil? The Hopi Indians and Ecuadorians and people all over the world, the natives in their ancient history have stories of intelligent beings coming and helping them build underground cities, facilities to survive the Great Flood, like Noah's Ark. Yeah, even the Hopi Indians and the Ecuadorians. And Eric von Donovich, the book, The Gold of the Gods, that I went over in a previous video. Somebody made gigantic caverns for these people that you could park a 747 in. Why does the United Nations logo look like the flat Earth theory? See, the center is the North Pole and the ice sheet around the perimeter, and there is the United Nations logo. What's up? What's up? Again, is all this meant to confuse? Why does the United Nations logo have 33 sections? 32 degrees, 33 degrees. Initiate, you know, degrees of the Freemasonry. Is this the true picture of the Earth? Obviously not. The Earth is round and the top is smaller than the bottom, but this doesn't look like that. They make it all like a flat map. This is obviously incorrect. But look at the ice sheet on the bottom. All right, more. What is reality? Who made these pictures in these ancient maps? Here's a book I guess you can get. And the Egyptian hieroglyphics has something like that. Does that mean that there's a big shield over the earth? See the stars on that belly of that creature? $5,000 for proving Walter Glenn Viola, who claimed the earth is flat and offers $5,000 for proof of the contrary. So this guy was offering $5,000 if anybody could prove the earth is round. Again, call me crazy. If they launched all those rockets off there in space to Mars and Pluto and everywhere, why couldn't they take a picture of Earth? You would think we would have millions of pictures of Earth from space. And the background with the stars and all that. Wouldn't you? And when you looked at it from far away, you'd see the moon even next to the Earth. You ever seen a picture like that? Why? And from space, you could probably spot other planets in the background pretty clear too, depending on where you took the picture from. So what is reality? What is the firmament mentioned in the Bible? Why do we only have composite pictures of the Earth, made by computers? Where's the stars in the background? Why are there no stars in the background when they went to the moon, if they went to the moon? I don't think they could have gone to the moon. They can't get through the shield. And if the Earth was flying at 66,000 miles an hour, I said 66,000 miles an hour, you think that the water would be swished off the Earth? And it's rotating at 1,000 miles an hour, turning around. And in 1 hour, it's moving 66,000 miles in a forward direction around the sun. 66,000 miles an hour. 666. 66.600. Is this the true reality of Earth? Okay. So I'm going to get back to my UFO book. Just, I'm listening to these entities talking here about Jessup's book, and I thought about the Philadelphia experiment, and that's another thing to consider too. The Earth is a magnetic field. If it were spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, that means the magnetic field would be spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And if it were hurtling forward at 66,000 miles an hour, apparently in the grip of the sun's magnetic field, I wonder what kind of anomaly it would have. Could it cause some kind of effect like the Philadelphia experiment? Are we all living in this gigantic projector created by that motion and the electronics and electricity and magnetic fields? Just interesting stuff, FYI. So moving back on this book, after my little intermission there about the flat earth theory and the Philadelphia experiment and these aliens marking up Jessup's book. So an alien says here, it seems interestingly reliable of humans to wait till they themselves have known flight and think now of space flight before admitting that others too have flight. Not, of course, that they are surpassed, not within, I'm reading this alien writing here, no, not when they now are clued to equaling idea of force fields, they now hope to become equals. So apparently with the apparent space flight, which seems unlikely that they have done from my research here, and they want the citizens of the planet Earth to think that we're equal to aliens, when we citizens don't know 1,000th of what these Mystery School of Babylon elitist people who are running our planet, the people who killed Kennedy, the people who caused the Oklahoma City bombing with those bombs wrapped around the pilings they don't tell you about, and just want you to believe that the guy drove up with fertilizer in the truck. Or 911, the people who caused that. What did they really know? Why did they do that? Barring the fact that I believe there was faulty construction and those buildings were coming down on their own from an inspection that was done when they first had the bomb in one of the lobbies in 1983, I think. And they hired some engineers and architects on one website I read many years ago. And they determined that they couldn't stop the buildings from falling apart. and insurance wouldn't cover dismantling the buildings. So that was one motivation. And two, the motivation was they could use that as a tool to say the Arabs attacked so they could destroy the Middle East, overthrow all the countries, take all the resources, kill all the people, get all the land, take what people they didn't kill, send them to the EU and the United States, and rest of other places in the world. It just seems to be something planned. And is all this UFO alien thing a distraction and a lie? Did they create this whole new religion of around the earth and UFOs and aliens and Star Trek movies, where Gene Roddenberry admits to going into meditative states, communicating with the other dimension to get the storylines for Star Trek? What is real? All right, moving on. Is there intelligence in space? So again, I'm reading the portions like this that are the aliens talking. Is nothing. Harvard experiments show that only a few humans have pi factor of any depth. They cannot teletalk to any clarity, nor thusly are they able to see beauty in each other's souls. So here the aliens are mentioning our souls. Thus they are forced into materialistic values and concepts and lack any sort of reasonable philosophy to lead them upwards, save the great book, the Bible. Crazy, you think? Throughout we are searching for objects, bodies, events which have been made, shaped by guided by forces. Here we go. The alien says this. Einstein's theory of unified field throughout all space and atmosphere was so well proven that upon realizing man's misanthropic emotionality, he withdrew it in 1927. So apparently Einstein said, oh my God, we can't give humans this information. So what do we humans really know? Why is there no picture of Earth from space? Who are aliens, UFOs? Are they the characters mentioned in the Bible? Is there civilizations living in the ocean? Have they been here all along? Are they living in great underground cavities? Are we on a gigantic plateau with 50 other domed areas and different kinds of civilizations, with gigantic ice fields a mile high so you can't traverse over there? Why is Antarctica occupied by forces from countries all over the world, and it is illegal for any citizens to go travel there? Other than the ones that they have invited for guests, who then put articles in newspapers and tell how nice it is. They bring them to a little place not too far from the coast and show them around. But you really can't just go take off in a plane and start your own company and want to go mine or find stuff 100 miles into the Antarctica. They will shoot you down. Why? Okay, here we go. Aliens again. Morris Jessup's book on the case for UFOs. He says, nobody knows the precise nature of this spatial intelligence, much less the nature of the physical body within which it resides. We therefore postulate that some percentage of artificiality or intelligence among the small percentage of storms which suddenly appear in otherwise undisturbed skies proceed with a purposeful manner, as though concealing something and discharge particular materials. They seem to be concentrated, perhaps too directive, to be entirely meteorologic in their origin. So we've all seen those adventure movies where the cloud comes over and it could be a lightning. It comes out of nowhere and starts lightning and destroying a city. And then everything gets better and it moves away quickly. Magic. What is it really? Who controls these forces? Look at all the things in the Bible. Alright, so now the alien says here, These storms which suddenly appear in otherwise undisturbed skies proceed with a purposeful manner as though concealing something and discharge particular materials. They seem to concentrate, perhaps too directive to be entirely meteorological in their origins. The alien says, dead giveaway. He knows. He says as much, too. Jessup says, as a means, then, of assuring that we do not knowingly overlook any possible contributory evidence in the case of the UFOs, I ask you to keep these storms and cloud formations in mind, and if possible, to fit them into the basis of any comprehensive conclusions which you may eventually draw. And I say that about all the stuff I'm talking about in this video and all my other videos. You know, take some notes. Let your brain open up and come to some conclusions. I believe that space structures of 5 to 20 miles in diameter are significantly large to produce such storms. So if you ever seen a volcano erupt, man, the lightning that comes out of that thing is crazy. Cracking and popping and shooting. This is a volcano shooting up rocks and lava. So apparently, Jessup is saying here, if you did have a spaceship, that came and it was 2 or 3, 20 miles wide or even 5 miles wide, it would create its own weather, firestorm, electricity, possibly even a cloud. Produce such storms, and there may be elements of purposefulness in so doing, if only for camouflage or concealment. And now the alien says, the LM Great Arc, bigger. So apparently there's these gigantic arc, according to this person who made notes in Jessup's book, that are that big, that come here. Gigantic arcs, the size of clouds. It may be difficult to see the significance of antiquity in the consideration of space flight and space inhabitants, but failure to consider the sprawling background of the UF problem is the greatest single factor of the appalling chaos which engulfs this enigma. So then Jessup talks about man-made metal objects found in the earth, even in old coal mines, 300,000 years old. And some of it was made out of steel, and the alien writes, before steel was known to humanity, I guess. So moving on the conversation here between Jessup and the aliens. Then there was a race of men here 300,000 years ago who knew enough to shape steel and by inference made machinery. If they could do that, they most likely had locomotive of some sort. And of course the scientists don't like to talk about that. The alien says, to wit, they had the wheel in many forms, such as machine tools or force field, shapers and cutter burners, which, and the other guy, another alien says, brother, they sure don't. Moving back down here to Jessup's writing. We do not care whether Earthmen took to space as a matter of convenience, comfort, or safety after blowing off a portion of the planet, or whether space inhabitants caused terrestrial intelligence in their own image, bluntly. What's the difference? The basic thought is that man is living in a world which he is neither the complete dominant nor the supreme intellectual being. And the alien says, ha, he'll never admit it, though pride. So again, I say that these people who are controlling our planet, entities and people in the Tibetan mountains, the Himalayas, the Shambhala people, the ancient knowledge that's kept secret, what's in the Vatican's vault. Whenever anybody finds a gigantic skeleton, let's say they're building a house in Ohio, and they have to build a foundation for the house and dig into the ground. If they find a 30-foot tall, 40-foot tall human skeleton, The Smithsonian will be in there like sharks, confiscate it, and make everybody shut up. Why? Stephen Quayle wrote that book on giants. All that's in there. And other books. And apparently in the Grand Canyon, some prospector found a cave full of Egyptian artifacts, all made out of gold and everything. One, how did they get there? And two, the Smithsonian swooped in, took it all, blew up the cave, and told everybody they had to shut up or they're going to prison. Why? A lot of whys in this video. Alright, I'm trying to wrap up this video. It won't take too long. Just trying to get through chapter 1 of Morris Jessup's book, A Case for the UFOs, which is marked up by some kind of other beings. And it's just calling into question our opinion, my opinion, of reality. What is it? How much have they lied? Did they create this whole UFO alien thing to fool us human beings? Think of them, millions, billions, trillions of dollars that the JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, and NASA, and many other contractors in the Cold War and the weaponry have spent. Is there a cosmic battle? Do the people who control this earthly realm we're on, planet or flat earth, whatever, are they at war with some other entities in some of these other domes or other planet? Is there some agenda behind the scenes we're all not aware of? And maybe they don't think we humans will go along if we find out the truth. So they're trying to dumb down America, trick everybody with mind control. Fluoride in the water, calcifying the pineal gland so you can't use your higher abilities, telepathic otherwise. And they want to microchip people, kill off a portion of the population. And a lot of other lies and deceptions, which is into the occult and the satanic and Luciferian, apparently reptilian, and maybe the robotic entities, which are the gray aliens, with apparently a rubbery skin and no, they don't eat or they don't use the no waste bathroom stuff. What is reality? I keep reading, maybe I'll get closer. So the alien says, that's just it. No one has dared to speak, except in comments to one another, till now. So they're talking about Jessup Morris's book. Darwin was castigated, ostracized. All right, moving on. Highlighted portion. Little indication of forward development, and considerable to show that they were degenerate remnants of something already lost behind the misty curtain of antiquity. It is my belief that we must admit to the doings of man in the eons prior to the collision of the earth with a vast aggregate of meteoric material which struck the Western Hemisphere some 10 to 15,000 years ago. So did mankind cause some kind of great destruction many years ago? Books have been written, libraries of them, to show this antiquity, but it has not been accepted, even in principle, by any branch of science. Geology opposes any type of cataclysmic change in structure of the earth, and will go to extremes to avoiding coming to grips with this erratics. Yet every science breaks down when it is forced to contemplate the origin of man's intellectual development. And I'm reminded also, 100 years ago we didn't have TV or radios, or cars and all that, to speak of. So here, for thousands of years, the growth of humanity is here. Horses and wagons, right? Since Jesus' time and beyond. No radios, no TVs. The last 100 years, we're off on a tangent. And apparently, with Nikola Tesla saying that he was incommunicado with the beings, visions and dreams, and now knowing what I know and these aliens, do you think the alien forces were introducing that into humanity? And if so, for what purpose? Obviously to bring us to this high technological age. And now they want to do away with 80%, 90% of the population, according to the USA Georgia Guidestones. What is the bigger agenda? And my highlighted portions, and more directly associated with forces which we do not yet comprehend. Yet in support of antiquity, of such an order, I have seen and touched stonework, carved out of the solid mountains of rock in South America. I told you, Jessup went to South America, investigated a lot of the ruins of the Mayans, etc. So he has touched the stonework, which certainly antedate the Andean glaciers, and almost as certainly predate the formation of the mountains themselves. Wow. This work is superior in technique to that accomplished by our current mechanized civilization. Much of the construction, sculpture, and tunneling could only have been accomplished by forces different from those used by us today. Like I said, if you go to the Andes Mountains in Ecuador, you could park a 727 inside the rooms of those mountains that are, the walls are all glass, like somebody cut them out with lasers. The quandary is largely resolvable by admitting to levitation. So how did they do these things? And he's saying they had to have levitation back then. Think on the top of the Andes Mountains going from Peru up to the Ecuador is supposed to be a gigantic highway made out of gigantic stone blocks. Of course, it's in disarray now, but apparently at one time, somebody had cut all these stone blocks and made a highway on top of the Andes Mountains. There's all kinds of monuments now that people can go look at. I would just love to go down there and start look at some of that stuff. Take some pictures and study it. They can't do it today. Anyways, either an abhorrent to science or to some religions, yet either presents a background of conditionality favorable to an extremely ancient development of wingless flight. Nothing else answers all the conundrums presented by the observed and recorded facts. As you will see, history is replete with stories of another great category of phenomena, the mysterious and ghostly disappearance of people, singularly in groups, publicly and in unobserved obscurity. These skin-tingling episodes seemed at first to have little in common with the falls of objects and the antics of storms. Many are incidences which, if their reality had been admitted at all, are in the view of scientists, spiritualists, and the students of the occult. See all the stuff I'm talking about? It's right here. Considered to belong or border on the so-called supernatural. Think about the Philadelphia experiment ship disappearing. The so-called supernatural. Again, it calls into question our perception of this reality, this room, this state, this continent, this planet. We've never gone to the moon, we've never gone into space, and there's a great hoax. Then what is the hoax? What's the purpose? And the prognosis doesn't look good with 450 million hollow point bullets, FEMA camps, and all the other preparations they're doing. Threaten of the economic crash, dollars, FEMA camps, vaccines, plagues, and all kinds of other weaponry they're developing. Sky spraying, HARP systems, 9/11, World War I, World War II, and planned, apparently, World War III. Ascension, destruction of Christianity, it's all got to fit together, in my opinion. Within these subjugations, we must place the disappearances of crews of ships, such as the Seabird and the Marie Celeste, the disappearances of individuals within the company of their peers. So people disappear right in the company of their friends. There is not much hypocating to be done with these. The stories can be told, the cases lumped together, as one big unexplained group of events. No explanation other than that of abduction by intelligently navigated aerial or celestial craft can be advanced. It is almost a case of proof by default. With planes, there is perhaps some added element, other than the mental fatigue, which involves striking some apparently solid object while in the air and being rent by unimaginable forces just before falling. Because of this additional evidence, I have put forth the accidents of 2 planes in a separate section in part 3 of this book. So apparently there have been planes flying over the United States and boom, crashing right into some invisible craft. Can you imagine? No time to get the mic and mayday, mayday. Just crash. Apparently that happens to sailors when they cross the Atlantic, let's say to the Bahamas. If you're not paying attention at night, you could crash right into the side of a cargo ship. And I almost did when I sailed my sailboat to the Bahamas. It was a pretty scary experience. But luckily I saw the lights and I veered off. Moving on. Planes seem to hit something which crushes them or tears them apart, which is nevertheless invisible, which strikes with such suddenness that the pilots do not have time to make an outcry via their ever-live radios. So the live radio never even gets a peep. Then, too, there are causes of dead or frightened birds, and cases of people being struck by unseen forces. As with 17 marching soldiers in 18th century France who were simultaneously struck down by invisible agency. The alien says, I like to read these little things that the alien says, one had a compass on him, fouled a sweep, made M's angry. So apparently the alien ship flying overhead, they apparently, I guess like in the Star Trek show or sci-fi movies, they can scan the ground below them. They call it a sweep. And if you have a compass on you, apparently it interacts with the sweep in a very disastrous way. That's what I'm reading here. After analyzing these things, one speculates as to 2 new types of obstacles, as well as new forces. Take the mysterious Maunder object, which moved deliberately across the sky from southern England on November 1882. So there was this gigantic object, they call it the Maunder object, that deliberately moved across the sky in southern England in 1882. And the alien says, arc in stasis, then came out of stasis. Whoa, there's something. See, I like reading this stuff. I get tidbits of information. So when you see one of those craft that's glowing and almost you can see through it, apparently it's in stasis. And then when it comes out of stasis, it looks like metal, apparently here. That's what it says. From such evidence, we come by easy stages to conceive of a force ray or focal point of some force field, or at least not understood. What's making a little bit more sense about the Philadelphia experiments and the pictures I showed here, I guess if you fine-tune the science of this, you could take a ship and put it in stasis and it would be invisible to the earthlings below. And then when it pops out of stasis, you can see the ship. So maybe by accident, the USA government discovered what the microwave transmitters put around the ship for a different purpose. They weren't actually trying to make a ship time travel or become invisible. They just wanted it to reflect the enemy's radar so the enemy's radar wouldn't pick up the ship. That makes sense. You have an electromagnetic field around the ship. You can see the ship, but maybe the distant enemy radar wouldn't be able to see the ship. That was the purpose of the Philadelphia experiment. By accident, they discovered the other activity. And then after that, when the Congress demanded that the government, the Navy, cease and desist, or whoever was doing it, it all went underground. And one place was at Project Montauk with the big SAGE antenna, creating portals and performing experiments with humans, and a lot of dead young men's bodies were found, the bones. So where is it all taking us today, 2016, February? So another example might be the passage of a limited but powerful magnetic field. So there we go again. I'm just reading my highlighted portions. Do the space dwellers have a force which produces this temporary rigidity in the air, or even possibly to the gravitational field itself? Or do they create local concentrations of the gravitational field as we are able to do with the magnetic field? The alien says, reverse magnetic force. Okay, moving on in this document. If such a force island were formed in the upper atmosphere, it might be very possible for it to have many of the physical characteristics of a solid body, and yet in matters of illumination it could behave exactly as any other auroral phenomena. In this connection, we must remember that auroral phenomena are magnetic and may be caused by streams of electrons from the sun, which are, in effect, precisely the type of force beam upon which we are speculating. I'm reminded of some of my previous videos I've shown, and you can look it up. But apparently the government has laser beam technology now on planes and on ships. And I'm talking a laser beam that can, on a ship that could shoot down a plane. So what else do they have? The alien says, yes, he is close. So the alien's talking about Jessup. But he doesn't think of mag inductors or of gravity as air, or though of it in jet propulsion. He doesn't know gravity and magnetism can be drawn into a ship built up to high power while being converted and used as a force propulsion. He may know of force shields of primitive ancient type. So apparently this technology goes way back in history. Oxygen is a magnetic substance, so highlights the alien. The alien says 2,000-watt cyclotron built in 1948. New York State gives proof of the actuality of solidity in force fields. However, it is not recognized yet or thought of yet as tool. Moving on. If he only knew by experience, he'd keep silent, the alien says. Not write or speak of it ever again in his lifetime. He couldn't speak of it. You see, Jemmy, it paralyzes one's senses of time and nullifies mental cognitive functions and memory. So he has no knowledge he could not have, only guessing. So the aliens are discussing Jessup's writings and thoughts. Again, here highlighted, it is not an aurora then, something very much akin to the congealed islands. The alien says, SF regarded as fantastic dreamers. Jessup says, have we a clue here, or are we dangerously close to science fiction? The alien says, shortcut to space travel, he has hit the nail. Jessup says in the book, it is but a step from such contemplations to a similar analysis of the Foo Fighters, fireballs, and comet-like objects, usually seen in groups of 6 or 8, and darting effervescence, things now, seen now and then over Washington, D.C. I'm not sure what year it was, 1968 or something. But apparently a whole bunch of comet-like glowing craft were seen hovering over Washington, D.C. You can look it up on the internet. But so many people don't know about these incidences. And another thing, of such things as a ruddy disk which buzzed Captain Manning's DC-3 near South Bend, Indiana. So some disk craft buzzed Captain Manning's DC-3. Or the devil hoof prints and related phenomenon. So apparently in one town, starting from one place, going across the ground, going on top of a building, going back down the building, going across the ground, going across the fields, were these punch marks in the ground, all identical. Confused the whole town. They go, what the heck is that? They called it the devil hoof prints. These marks were equally spaced, occurring singularly, not in twos or fours. So these marks weren't like an animal or a human walking with two. They were just singularly punch marks in the ground. And on top of the building, and down the building, and across the field, and across stone fences. The alien says the measure marker was accidentally left idling that time. Nowadays, measure markers are not used except by underseas explorer. So apparently a ship in space has something that they aim at the ground and they can measure the ground and it leaves a punch hole, like a survey marker. But everybody was back then. They were seriously confused. So I think I'm going to leave it there on this video. I got enough here for another video, maybe part 3, if you're interested in this stuff. So what is reality, like in the Rosicrucian material? Are we under some kind of dome? You can go look this up. Look up the Kabbalah and images. The Kabbalah, witchcraft, magic. And you will find these images. Makes one wonder. Makes one wonder, what is reality? Why are there no pictures of Earth? These are not pictures, these are composites. Nobody has ever seen a picture of Earth from space. The one thing I can think of is maybe they have something to hide. Why is the United Nations logo showing an Earth with its center like this? What's with the old maps? Like the United Nations logo. And it might behoove people to go get this book and read it. Plenty of conversation on this issue on the internet. I always thought it was just crazy. But I keep an open mind and I keep researching. So thank you for watching my video. Rick Merico reporting.